Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make a card using some stamps and dies from Stampin' Up. And this one's called In the Grove, and then we have an older one called Grassygrove and the dies that go with them. And I'm going to show you how to make a card similar to this, and it has a special surprise. Ta-da! Pretty cool, huh? So I'm going to show you how to make a card similar to this. I'm going to use Stampin' Up papers and some Close to My Heart cardstock. So stay tuned. Okay, so you'll need the In the Grove stamp and die set, along with the Grassygrove and Grove dies sets. And I'll explain how these are all used. And then also the Country Woods DSP from Stampin' Up. Okay, so these are the two stamp sets, and this is how I store my dies. I'll put a link in the description below. I got these off Amazon. There's some 5x7 magnetic sheets and clear envelopes, and I'm hoping that this system will work. Okay, so this is the DSP from Country Woods, and it kind of looks like birch. I'm going to make it look like birch tree, and I'm using the grain that's horizontal. This is a new cardstock from Close to My Heart. It was supposed to be released in August, and it is called Frost. And I'll make a list of all the compatible Stampin' Up colors to the ones that I'm using. And then I wasn't sure which glitter paper I wanted to use, so I pulled both Mist and Harbor. I wound up using Harbor. You will also need a lot of glue dots, and the ink colors that I'm going to use are Mink, Sage, and Mist. And you will need some fairy lights. I got these from Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below. And these come with the little device that has a battery in there, and you'll want to pull this tab to release the battery and get it going. And unwind your fairy lights and make sure they work before you start creating your card. Okay, so, and then you're also going to need a bunch of foam tape. Okay, I'll put a link in the description to find this huge roll of foam tape, because you're going to need 3 layers so they're thick enough to be on the same plane as the thickness of the fairy light device. Okay, you'll see how that works in just a bit. So we're going to start with the Frost cardstock. I'm using the light side, and I'm cutting a piece at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which is an A2 card size. And then I have another piece of white cardstock just to add strength. This is going to be the base of our whole card front, so you want it to be super strong. So I'm just doubling up to add some thickness and strength to this base piece that everything's going to be built upon. Okay, so we're going to do some stamping for our background. So this is my prototype that I created, and I'm kind of looking to see where I can pop this mountain stamped image in the background. So there's a die that also creates a mountain range, so I want to use both. So I want the highest peak of this mountain range to be just to the left of the peak of the die cut. All right, so you'll see what I mean as we get going. So I'm just kind of figuring out the positioning, and I'm going to stamp with Mist ink. And because I'm going to stamp off the edge, I'm shifting the whole image over to the left. I want some scratch paper behind my cardstock to catch that extra ink. And we'll go ahead and figure out the positioning of this image. Make sure it's synced up really well, and we'll stamp that down. And then I'm going to ink it up again and complete the image over on the right side. My die cuts are going to cover this up, so it doesn't matter too much, but I just want a continuous line of the mountain range to work with. So we'll go ahead and stamp that side. And now we have our background. Okay, now we're going to start adding foam tape. So I have my device for my fairy lights, and that's going to go in the bottom right corner. And you want to make sure that you're going to be able to stick your finger in the side there to switch that off-on switch on. And then just start laying your foam tape around the outer edges. Okay, so I'm just kind of keeping this device there just so I make sure I don't put too much foam tape, and we'll be able to accommodate that. So I'm just going to create a frame around the edges of foam tape. A bit fussy, but we'll get it. So we'll go ahead and place this down. Of course, I could measure, but I'm lazy, so I'm just gonna stick pieces of foam tape in here and hope they're gonna work. Okay, so that's the first layer. Now we can remove that device and we don't have all that wire in the way. So that's the first layer, and then I'm gonna remove that protective tape and add my second layer. And we're going to do this all the way around, same thing. And then we'll remove the protective tape again, and we'll put a third layer down. And after you do your third layer, leave the protective tape on it so you can work with everything before you remove it. Okay, so this is layer 3. Depending on the thickness of your foam tape, you might have to go 4 layers. So just make sure it's the same thickness as your fairy light device. Okay, so now I'm going to secure the fairy light down to that corner with some large glue dots. And I want to make sure it's not going to move, so I'm going to pop 3 of these down. And then we'll go ahead and stick that in the corner. Making sure it works. Always want to check. It's like Christmas lights. You want to make sure everything works before you get it completed. So then you just bend. This is wire, so it's very accommodating. You can bend it any way you want. So just start sticking it down using some glue dots. And I want to create like a halo of lights at the very top of the card. So I'm going to accordion fold my lights and add glue dots as I go. And you will see some of the wiring through the die cuts, but I think that's okay. The overall effect is worth it. Okay, so that's what it looks like after you've got everything accordion folded and secured with all your glue dots. And it looks like a mess right there, but don't worry, our die cuts will cover up that. Okay, so we've got 2 die cuts. One's from the Grove set and one's from In the Grove. And I'm going to cut my DSP. I'm using the one that's the corner that's the fairest. It's the lightest coloring. And I'm making sure that my lines are horizontal on this pattern paper. So when I cut it, it's going to have those birch tree horizontal lines and give that effect. Okay, now I've got a piece of sage. This is the light side of sage. And that's what I'm going to cut the other die with. Now, when you set these up, they don't cut an outer edge. So it's going to create a hole in the center of your cardstock. So you want your cardstock piece to be the card front size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then you want to place it. So for the first one with the full trees, the bottom is easiest to line up straight. And then with the second one with the birch trees, the top of the die is easiest to line up straight. Okay, so with the birch tree die, you're going to want to cut 2 more layers of white cardstock so that you can create some thickness to these 2 layers, and it gives a lot of dimension to the front of your card. So glue all 3 of these together, and when you glue them, line up the tree branches themselves. You can always cut and alter the edges of the card by trimming off just the parts that don't line up, but make sure that your trees match. Okay, so we have those layers all done. Now we're going to work on our mountain range. So I'm going to bring in this piece of Harbor I'm looking at the colors and deciding I like the harbor better. So I'm going to cut a piece at 5.5 by 3. And I'm going to cut that mountain range. So again, I'm looking to see where the highest peak is going to land. I want to make sure you can see it through the trees and also see that background stamp just a bit. Okay, so I'm figuring out where that's going to get placed. So part of the die is going to hang off the edge, and that's okay. So I'm lining this up, and then I'll secure it with some purple tape and run it through. And then I have to shift everything over so that I can cut the remaining portion of that piece of glitter paper. So we'll go ahead and place that and run it through again. Okay, so now we have our mountain range, and pop out all those bits and make sure it looks okay. And then we're going to bring in this line of trees. So I'm going to cut a piece of sage. Now I'm using the regular shade of sage, and I'm going to cut this line of trees. And of course the die isn't 5.5 inches long, so I'm going to have to run it through twice. So we've got the first pass, I'll shift it and run it through again. Okay, so I'm going to do some treatment to this image. I'm going to bring in some scratch paper and my sage ink pad. So I'm just going to swipe the ink pad along this image. And then I'll shift it and go the other direction just to add some inked treatment to make it look like a grassy meadow and then a green tree line. Okay, so now this stamp, it took me a minute to figure this out. The stamp that's in the grove coordinates with the die from the grove set, the die set. Okay, so the stamp that's in the new set called In the Grove are leaves that work on this die set from the older Grove die set. A friend and I looked at this for a very long time and we couldn't figure out what the stamped image was, and then we finally figured out that they're little leaves. Thank you, Terry, for helping me with that. So I'm stamping my little leaves on these trees in sage. So it's tone on tone and just kind of random stamping leaves everywhere. And I've got that scratch paper behind it to catch the excess. Okay, so now I'm going to ink up this deer image, and it's in mink ink on the light side of mink cardstock. Okay, so I'm going to stamp it several times. It's a brand new stamp, so that's part of needing to stamp it a few times, and I just want to create some depth of color. All right, so this comes with a coordinating die. That's part of the Grove set. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. And then there's two little dies that are in the Grove die set. That one's a little squirrel and one's a little bunny rabbit. So I've got those cut out on the light side of mink. Okay, so now I have all my components to my card, and I'm going to go ahead and remove that protective tape from the foam tape, and we'll go ahead and add in our mountain range. Now, when you're securing something on top of glitter paper, you need a really strong double-sided tape. So this is score tape. So I'm going to put some pieces down, and then ultimately I just decided to use score tape for everything to assemble my whole card. So then we'll go ahead and add in that tree line. And then we'll add in our full trees. And layer everything up to create our scene. Okay, and then the final layer is that 3 layers of cardstock there with the birch trees. So we'll add that. And then we'll add our deer. And deciding which tree, I'm just going to slide part of the deer behind the birch tree and part in front, and we'll just secure the little deer down with some glue. And then we'll add our squirrel and rabbit. And then we have our whole scene created. Okay, and then you'll want to add some anti-static powder along the edges where that foam tape is so that it's not sticky anymore. You don't want to pick up any lint or yucky stuff, so you want to make sure it's not sticky on the sides and make sure it works. So we'll turn that on. Now I have lots of photos with the lights on and with them off, so you can see close-up shots here of what everything looks like. This is fun, and this is a keeper card, so yeah, I think it turned out really nice. So I'll make a list of all the supplies that I used, along with alternative Stampin' Up supplies for in place of the Close to My Heart supplies that I used. So you can go shopping and get what you need to create these cards. So I created another one using white glitter paper and white cardstock. So I appreciate you watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button, and then you'll be able to find all of my videos. And thanks for watching.